The boardroom on the 47th floor of the Whitlock Capitol building was designed to intimidate. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed a panoramic view of Midtown Manhattan. The conference table was 40 feet long, solid black walnut mirror polished. A crystal water pitcher sat at the center untouched. At the far end of that table, completely still sat a woman. She wasn't checking her phone. She wasn't reviewing documents. She was simply sitting, hands folded, back straight, eyes forward. Her name was Dr. Althia Rowan. In approximately 11 minutes, she was going to make a decision that would send shockwaves through Wall Street before the closing bell. The door burst open. 6 men in tailored suits poured in, laughing the energy of men who had never once questioned whether they belonged in a room. The man at the front stopped when he saw her. His name was Grayson Whitlock. He looked at Althia, the way someone looks at a package left at the wrong address, confused, mildly, inconvenienced, already dismissive. He did not extend his hand. What he said next would cost him everything. Drop a comment below, where are you watching from? And what time is it in your city right now? I read every single one. And if you haven't subscribed yet, hit that button because this story is only getting started. The alarm on Althia Rowan's phone went off at 4:47 a.m., the time her mother used to leave for the hospital sneakers, squeaking down the hallway thermos of black coffee in hand, a 12-hour shift ahead before the sun rose over Southside Chicago. Althia had never forgotten that sound. She lay still in the dark of her penthouse on Lakeshore Drive, not dreaming, not drifting, thinking, calculating, mapping the hours ahead like a chess player 12 moves into the game. Today was not a routine day. Today she would walk into Whitlock Capital Group's headquarters on Park Avenue and finalize or terminate the largest investment commitment her firm had ever put on the table. $3.2 billion, 18 months of due diligence, 47 pages of terms, and a man who had been calling her assistant, not her, never her, directly to confirm logistics. She had found that detail interesting. She rose, moved to the window, looked out at the lake. She had grown up 6 miles from the shoreline in a 2-bedroom apartment on the 63rd Street. Her father, Leonard Rowan, had worked 31 years at a steel fabrication plant in Gary, Indiana. Her mother, Celestine, had spent 2 decades as a night shift nurse at Stroger Hospital, coming home with swollen feet and a quiet dignity that Althia had spent her adult life trying to replicate. They had not been wealthy, but they had been deliberate, every dollar tracked, every sacrifice made with intention. She dressed in a charcoal Armani suit and sat with a single espresso and her briefing documents. She had memorized every figure weeks ago, but read them again anyway. Discipline was not something you practiced only when it was difficult. At 6:15 a.m., her chief of staff, Marcus Webb, called. Morning. Cars confirmed for 7. Flight boards at 8:40. Legal reviewed the withdrawal clause. It's clean. You can execute unilaterally if you need to. I know, Althia said. You've already decided, haven't you? I haven't decided anything yet. I'm going to give Grayson Whitlock exactly one opportunity to show me who he is. And if he shows you exactly who you think he is, then I'll act accordingly. Have the withdrawal authorization ready on the secondary tablet. Encrypted. Don't open it unless I text you the word Thursday. Thursday, Marcus repeated quietly. Understood. Althia had built Rowan Capital from a number most people in her world would have considered impossible. In 2009, at 29, with a doctorate from Columbia, she had approached 11 banks. 9 rejected her without a second meeting. 1 offered terms bordering on predatory. The 11th, a community development bank on the south side, approved her for $180,000 with her parents' home as partial collateral. She had not slept the night after signing. The weight was not abstract. It was her parents' house. 31 years of her father's labor made concrete in brick and mortar. She had not permitted herself to fail. By 2012, Rowan Capital returned 34% annually. By 2015, assets crossed $400 million. By 2019, she was on Forbes' list of the most powerful women in finance. By the morning she boarded her flight to New York, Rowan Capital's portfolio stood at $3.2 billion. She arrived at Whitlock Capital on Park Avenue at 11:20 a.m., 40 minutes early. The receptionist hesitated before saying, "And you are here for..." "Oh." The 11 o'clock meeting, Dr. Rowan. Something behind the receptionist's eyes shifted. "Of course, right this way." She was shown to the 47th floor boardroom, offered water she declined and left alone. She sat at the far end of the table, folded her hands and waited. She thought about her mother leaving at 4:47 with a thermos. She thought about the $180,000 loan in her parents' house on the line. She thought about 11 banks and 9 rejections. Then she heard voices in the hallway, and the boardroom door swung open. Grayson Whitlock entered the room the way he entered every room, as though it had been built specifically to receive him. He was 52, broad-shouldered, silver-haired, navy Brioni suite Patek Philippe watch. Behind him came 5 others, 2 senior partners, legal counsel named Barrett, a young analyst and a communications director, whose job was apparently to stand behind Grayson and nod. They were laughing when they entered. The laughter of men who considered every corridor in this building their natural habitat. Grayson was 3 steps in before he registered that someone was already seated at the far end of his table. He stopped. His eyes moved over Althia, quick assessing 2 seconds. Something settled behind his eyes that was not curiosity and was not respect. It was dismissal. "Can I help you?" His tone communicated without raising its volume that the person being addressed was in the wrong place. "I'm here for the 11 o'clock meeting," she said. "Dr. Rowan." Grayson's head tilted. He glanced at Barrett, who had gone very still. "From Rowan Capital," Althia added without inflection. Barrett opened his mouth, reconsidered, closed it again. The face of a man calculating whether there was any way to intervene before the situation became irreversible. There was not. Grayson did not extend his hand. He pulled out the chair at the opposite head of the table, his chair the power position, and sat down. "We're expecting the Rowan Capital representative at 11, he said, as though Althia had not spoken. "Let's get set up." "Mr. Whitlock," she said. He looked up, faintly impatient. "I am the Rowan Capital representative." The room went quiet in the specific way rooms go quiet when something has been said that cannot be unsaid. Grayson smiled, not a warm smile. "Right. We'll need to verify credentials. Barrett, can you check with the front desk, confirm the principal contact from Rowan is still scheduled?" Barrett did not move. "Grayson," he said quietly, "she is the principal contact. I understand that. I'm asking you to confirm it through the front desk. Her name is on the term sheet. Dr. Althia Rowan, CEO and sole managing partner of Rowan Capital. She's been the signatory on every document we've received for 18 months. Grayson picked up his water glass, took a measured sip, set it down. "I see, Dara," he said. "Dr. Rowan." He said the title landing like something he was tolerating. "I apologize for the confusion. Shall we begin?" He still had not offered his hand. Althia had noted it from the first moment, cataloged it with the same precise attention she applied to balance sheets, not with anger, but with the cold clarity of someone collecting data. She opened her folder and placed a single document in front of her. Grayson leaned forward, clasped his hands, and spoke about synergies and market positioning and the extraordinary opportunity this partnership represented. He spoke for 4 minutes and 30 seconds. Althia listened without interrupting, without taking notes, without visible reaction. When he finished, she looked at him with the same unhurried attention. "Thank you. Before we discuss terms, I have a few questions." "Of course," Grayson said magnanimously. "How many minority-owned firms are currently in your investment portfolio, Mr. Whitlock?" The question landed like a stone dropped into still water. The communications director's pen stopped. The analyst looked up. Barrett went completely still. "That's not typically the framing we use for our portfolio analysis," Grayson said carefully. "I understand. How many?" 3 seconds of silence. "I'd have to have my team pull those specific figures." Althia nodded slowly, as though this confirmed something she already knew. She removed a second document from her folder, placed it beside the first, smoothed it flat with one hand. She did not speak. She let the silence work. Something in the room had shifted invisibly but completely, the way pressure changes before a storm. The presentation continued to glow on the screen. Nobody was looking at it anymore. The room had reorganized around a new center of gravity, the 2 documents on the table, and the quality of attention Althia was directing at Grayson Whitlock. He cleared his throat. "Dr. Rowan, I want to be straightforward. Whitlock Capital has been in operation 23 years. Exceptional track record. Portfolio outperforming the market benchmark 8% annually. For a firm of your A-half beta profile, this level of institutional alignment is a significant opportunity. For a firm of your profile." Barrett looked down at the table. The analyst stared at his screen with the intensity of someone who desperately wished he were somewhere else. Althia said nothing. Then she slid the second document to the center of the table. 1 printed page, 3 case numbers, 3 dates spanning 9 years. Below each a 4-line factual summary, the writing of lawyers, not storytellers. 3 civil complaints. 3 different plaintiffs, all minority-owned businesses or minority executives, alleging discriminatory practices in Whitlock Capital's partnership selection and contract termination. All settled out of court, all with non-disclosure agreements. None had ever appeared in any public disclosure. Grayson's jaw tightened. These are settled matters. Settlements are not admissions of wrongdoing. I'm aware of what settlements are, Althia said. I'm not raising these as legal claims. I'm raising them as a pattern of conduct material to my investment decision. That is my right as the capital source in this transaction. Grayson sat back. The ease he had carried into the room had contracted. He looked at Barrett, who met his eyes briefly and looked away. There may have been some miscommunication when I arrived, he said carefully. I hope we can move past that and focus on the substance of what we're here to discuss. It was the closest Grayson Whitlock had come to an apology in a decade. Althia looked at him for an unhurried moment. There was no miscommunication, she said quietly. You understood exactly who I was and made a choice about how to treat me. I understood exactly who you were and made a note of it. The silence had a physical quality, something you could feel. The analyst had stopped typing. The communications director's pen rested on a blank page. Barrett was looking at his hands. Grayson's phone lit up. He didn't look at it. What will it take, he said carefully, to move forward with this agreement? The question of someone negotiating from behind. Althia reached into her folder and removed a third document. This one she did not place on the table. She held it. I'd like to take a 5-minute recess. I need to make a call. Of course, take all the time you need. She walked to the far end of the room near the windows, her back to the table looking out at the city 47 stories below. She typed a single word to Marcus Webb. Thursday. She stood at the window 90 seconds more, letting the weight of her decision settle not with doubt, but with the grounded certainty of someone who had examined every angle and arrived at the only conclusion the evidence supported. Then she walked back to the table and sat down. She placed the third document face down in front of her. Ready to continue, Grayson said. Yes, Althia said. I am. She turned the document over. The document was 1 page. Clean white paper. No letterhead. Just text precise, formal, legally unambiguous, constituting a unilateral investment withdrawal authorization under Section 14.7 of the Rowan Capital Partnership Framework. Althia placed it flat on the table and looked at Grayson without sliding it toward him. He read it. Then his phone lit up with a text preview from his head of trading, David Calloway. Grayson, call me now. He looked up at Althia. What is this, he said, the expansive warmth entirely gone. A withdrawal authorization. Under the terms of the preliminary agreement your legal team drafted in March, Rowan Capital retains the unilateral right to withdraw committed capital if the lead partner determines that material concerns have arisen regarding the receiving entity's conduct governance standards or alignment with Rowan Capital's investment principles. She paused. Your legal team wrote that clause, Mr. Whitlock. Barrett can confirm. Every head turned toward Barrett. He chose each word carefully. That language is in the preliminary agreement. Yes. Something moved through Grayson's face, the specific shock of a man who had never genuinely considered that someone he had dismissed might have the power to act. You can't be serious, he said. I'm entirely serious. The 3 settled complaints represent a documented pattern of discriminatory practice incompatible with Rowan Capital's investment principles. Under Section 14.7, I am exercising my right to withdraw. Those complaints were settled. There were NDAs. The NDAs bind the plaintiffs, not me. I obtained this information through independent legal research entirely within my rights. Grayson pushed back from the table in involuntary movement. Do you understand what you're doing, $3 billion? We have obligations. Counterparties positioned against this deal, closing. I understand precisely what happens. I've modeled it. His phone lit again, then a third time. This is because of what happened when I walked in, he said. This is personal. Althia held the look for a long, considered moment. Mr. Whitlock, when you walked into this room, you made a series of decisions in approximately 2 seconds. You decided I didn't belong here. You asked your staff to verify my identity through the front desk after I had already identified myself. You have not once offered to shake my hand. You referred to this firm's opportunity as significant for a company of my, she paused, profile. She let that word sit between them. None of that is personal. All of that is data. and I make decisions based on data. She picked up the withdrawal authorization, uncapped a plain black pen, and signed her name at the bottom with 3 clean, unhurried strokes. Althia Rowan PRD. She slid the signed document to the center of the table. Then she sent a second message to Marcus: execute full withdrawal. The response came in 11 seconds. Done. Confirmation to follow. What happened next occurred in stages, the way structural failures always do. Grayson's phone began ringing. He answered, turning slightly away. Althia watched him listen. She watched the color change in the back of his neck, a slow, creeping shift from tan to something grayer, as whatever David Calloway was saying on the other end translated from words into physical reality. The market had already registered the withdrawal. Whitlock Capital's funding structure had been built around the assumption that Rowan's investment would close today. Counterparties had positioned accordingly. Credit lines had been extended against that assumption. 2 secondary investors had tied their own commitments to Rowan's lead. When the withdrawal executed, the signal moved through the system faster than any phone call. By the time Grayson ended his call and set his phone face up on the table, his stock had dropped 14% on volume, 3 times its daily average. Grayson turned to face the room. He looked older than when he had walked in, a slight deflation around the eyes and jaw. The aging that happens when something a person has always assumed about themselves turns out to have been assumption rather than fact. Althia was capping her folder, aligning her documents with precise, unhurried care. "You had every opportunity to walk in here and do this differently," she said. Her voice was not triumphant, simply factual. "You chose not to." She stood. "You had one chance. You chose this." She buttoned her jacket, picked up her phone, her folder, her plain black pen. She looked at Barrett, who met her eyes and looked away. At the analyst staring at the table. At Grayson standing at the head of the table with both hands flat on the black walnut surface. She walked to the door. She did not hurry. She did not look back. The door closed behind her with a soft, definitive click, the sound of something ending cleanly. The elevator was waiting. Her phone buzzed once. "Full withdrawal confirmed. $3.2 billion reallocated. It's done." She put the phone in her pocket and stood quietly as the elevator descended 47 floors through the heart of a building that would never look the same to its owner again. Althia crossed the marble lobby without stopping. The same receptionist who had hesitated earlier watched her emerge from the elevator with an expression that had changed considerably. She walked through the revolving door and out onto Park Avenue. The October air was cool and sharp. She stood on the sidewalk a moment, not processing, not celebrating, just standing, letting the city move around her. Her car was at the curb. Earl, who had been driving her around New York for 6 years, took one look at her posture and simply nodded. "Airport, if one turns." "Not yet, give me a few minutes." She called Marcus. "It's moving fast," he said. "WCG is down 19%. 2 secondary investors have already filed preliminary withdrawal notices. Calloway sent a statement calling this a routine portfolio adjustment. Nobody's buying it. The 3 complaints, have they surfaced yet? First mentioned on a financial blog 12 minutes ago. By tomorrow it'll be in the mainstream press." A pause. "You knew this would happen." "I knew it was possible. The withdrawal is clean. The legal basis is airtight. Everything that follows comes from his own record." Barrett called our legal team. "He wants to discuss mitigation." "Tell them we're not available today. If Barrett wants a conversation next week, we'll consider it." A pause. "Have the reallocation strategy ready for my review on the flight back. The infrastructure fund and the 3 minority-owned tech firms from September. Already pulled. It's on your tablet." "Good, I'll be at LaGuardia by 2. She pulled the car door closed. "Airport might," she told Earl. By the time Althia's flight lifted off LaGuardia at 2:24 p.m., Whitlock Capital's stock had fallen 26%. By the time the flight crossed Pennsylvania, 2 of Whitlock's 3 largest institutional partners had issued statements announcing a review of their positions. By the time Chicago appeared through the clouds, a Wall Street Journal reporter had published Rowan Capital pulls $3.2 billion from Whitlock sources, cite governance concerns. The piece named Althia in the second sentence. Grayson Whitlock's communications team had not responded. 6 days after the meeting, Grayson called a board of directors emergency session. The stock had stabilized at 31% below its pre-meeting open. 3 senior partners announced departures. The credit line tied to Rowan's commitment was called in, triggering a liquidity event Whitlock's balance sheet could not absorb. The word restructuring appeared in an 8K filing 11 days later. Financial journalists used a different word: collapse. Barrett resigned on the 14th day. Althea did not follow the coverage closely. She had a firm to run a reallocation strategy to execute in three minority-owned technology companies in Seattle, Atlanta, and Houston, reviewing term sheets. She made time for one thing. On the 14th evening, after the meeting, she drove to her parents' home on 63rd Street. Her father was in the kitchen making slow-cooked short ribs, the same dish every other Sunday, for as long as she could remember. Her mother was in the living room reading Feet on the Ottoman, a cup of tea beside her. Althea sat in the armchair across from her mother and looked around the room. The photographs, the worn carpet, the lamplight making everything amber and familiar, and felt something she could not easily name. Gratitude and grief and pride, and love pressing against the inside of her chest with the warmth of things that are real. Her mother looked up. "You look tired," Celestine said. "I'm okay." Her mother studied her face. "Did it go the way you expected?" Althea thought about the boardroom, the untouched water pitcher, Grayson walking through the door. 2 seconds. The choice he had made. "Yes, it did." Her mother nodded once slowly. "Good," Celestine said and returned to her book. In the kitchen, Leonard Rowan hummed something low and tuneless over the sound of a pot coming to a slow boil. The lamplight held everything amber and warm. Outside, Chicago moved through the October evening with its usual unhurried permanence. 6 months after the meeting on the 47th floor, Grayson Whitlock's attorneys filed Chapter 11, bankruptcy protection on behalf of Whitlock Capital Group in the United States Bankruptcy Court for the Southern District of New York. The filing was 847 pages long. Total liabilities of $1.4 billion against assets systematically reduced by partner departures, unwound leveraged positions, and the inexorable logic of a firm whose foundational assumption that the people it dismissed had no recourse had turned out to be wrong. The Wall Street Journal ran it on the front page of the markets section. Bloomberg dedicated a long-form analysis tracing the cascade from the October meeting to the final arithmetic of a balance sheet that could no longer hold its shape. Althea's name appeared in every piece. She read none of them. She was in Atlanta on the morning the filing hit the wire in a conference room on the 14th floor of a glass building in Midtown Atlanta, across the table from a 34-year-old woman named Denise Okafor. Denise was the founder and CEO of ClearPath Systems, a healthcare technology company with a predictive analytics platform for underserved hospital networks in the Southeast. 3 years in operation, consistent clinical outcomes, improvement across 11 partner hospitals, and 4 institutional investors who had declined in the previous 18 months, 2 citing market conditions, 1 geographic concentration, 1 offering no reason at all. Denise had not given up. After each rejection, she updated her model, strengthened her data, and sent the next letter to the next firm on her list. Althea recognized her immediately, not because of her credentials or her pitch, but because of the way she held herself. The particular quality of someone who had been told no more times than was reasonable and had continued anyway, not from naivety, but from a disciplined belief that what they were building was worth building. 90 minutes, 31 questions. Clinical outcome data unit economics, partnership contracts, 3-year financial model. Then Althea offered Denise Okafor a term sheet. Rowan Capital, lead investor. $47 million Series A with a pathway to a $120 million Series B, contingent on 18-month performance milestones. Denise looked at the term sheet for a long moment without speaking. When she looked up, her eyes were bright with something she was making a deliberate effort to contain. "Why us?" she said. "There are larger companies in this space with cleaner cap tables. Because the data is real, and because you came back after 4 no's and made the case stronger each time. That's not stubbornness. That's the specific quality of someone who is right about what they're building and knows how to prove it." Denise nodded. "We'll need our legal team to review the terms." "Of course. Take the time you need." They shook hands, firm, unhurried, the kind that carries weight. 3 weeks later, on a Thursday morning in mid-May, Althea stood at a podium in a sunlit event space in Chicago's West Loop before an audience of approximately 300 entrepreneurs, investors, nonprofit directors, academics, journalists, and many young people who had traveled distances their budgets had not easily accommodated. The occasion was the public launch of the Rowan Equity Initiative, a $500 million fund dedicated entirely to providing institutional-grade capital to minority-owned businesses and minority-led organizations across the United States. Healthcare, technology, education, manufacturing infrastructure. Companies that had been building real things with real results and had been repeatedly turned away from the rooms where the money lived. The initiative had a staff of 12 offices in Chicago, Atlanta, and Houston, a 10-year investment horizon, and a mandate that measured success not only by financial return, but by the number of businesses that received first institutional investment jobs created in underserved communities and founders who crossed from one side of the table to the other. Althea looked at her notes, a single index card, 4 bullet points, then set the card down and spoke without it. My mother left for work at 4:47 every morning, she said. My father drove 40 minutes each way for 31 years. They were not wealthy, but they understood something I have spent my entire career trying to articulate in the language of finance. She paused. They understood that the purpose of resources is not to accumulate them. It is to deploy them in the direction of things that matter. That is what capital is for. That is the only reason it is worth having. The room was very quiet. The Rowan Equity Initiative exists because there are people in this country, in every city, in every industry, who are building things that matter, and who have been told by omission or by action that the rooms where decisions are made are not rooms they belong in. She looked across the audience and found in the third row a young woman no older than 22 sitting forward in her chair with the focused, open attention of someone hearing something they had needed to hear for a long time. We are here to say otherwise, Althea said. We are here to open those rooms, not as a gesture, not as a concession, as a recognition of reality that the talent in the discipline and the vision have always been there. What was missing was access. We intend to change that. The applause started slowly and built not polite rhythmic applause, but the irregular, genuine sound of people responding to something that had reached them. When the applause settled, she reached beneath the podium and brought out a single document, a check for $2.3 million, made out to Future Forward Chicago, a nonprofit running financial literacy and entrepreneurship programs for young people in Southside Chicago, including specifically the neighborhood where Althea had grown up around 63rd Street. She held the check up. This is the first disbursement of the Rowan Equity Initiative, she said. It goes home first. In the front row, she could see her parents. Leonard Rowan, 71 years old, retired 6 years from the steel plant. Wearing the good suit he reserved for occasions that warranted it, hands folded in his lap face, carrying the expression of a man who had worked 31 years for something and was now seeing what that something had become. Celestine Rowan, 68 years old, a thermos of black coffee on the floor beside her chair, out of pure habit watching her daughter with the same quiet assessing attention, reading her, knowing her, finding her, exactly as she had always known she would be. Althea looked at them. She held that look for exactly the length of time it deserved. Then she turned back to the audience and to the work. Grayson Whitlock was not in the room. He was not in any of the rooms that mattered anymore. His bankruptcy proceedings were ongoing. His name appeared occasionally in the financial press, in litigation updates, and asset liquidation notices, the diminishing administrative aftermath of a collapse. He had not issued any public statements since the October meeting. He had nothing left to say that anyone was positioned to hear. The check was signed. The room was full. And in the third row, a 22-year-old woman who had traveled 6 hours by bus from Memphis, Tennessee, sat forward in her chair and thought about the business she was going to build. She had already been told no twice. She was not finished. There is a particular kind of power that the world often fails to recognize until it is too late. It does not announce itself. It does not perform. It moves quietly, deliberately, with the patience of someone who has done the work and knows what the work is worth, and it arrives when it arrives, not as a surprise to the person who possesses it, but as a revelation to everyone who assumed it wasn't there. Dr. Althia Rowan walked into a room on the 47th floor of a Midtown Manhattan building and sat down at a table where someone had already decided what she was before she spoke a single word. She did not argue against that decision. She did not perform outrage. She did not demand that the room recalibrate its assumptions. She simply waited. She listened. She collected the data. And then she acted precisely, legally, completely, in a way that reflected 15 years of discipline, sacrifice, and work, and the 30 years before that of watching her parents move through a world that had never made things easy for people who looked like them. The $3.2 billion withdrawal was not revenge. It was not a statement. It was a decision made by a person in full possession of her own power, responding to evidence, acting within her rights, bearing the consequences with the same steadiness she had brought to everything else. But it was also something more. Because power exercised clearly in the open by someone the world expected to be powerless, that changes things. Not just for the person who exercises it, for every person watching, for every young woman sitting forward in a third-row chair, for every founder told no by rooms that didn't see her clearly. It says the rooms are not as closed as they appeared. It says the work is worth doing. It says patience is not passivity, silence is not absence, stillness is not surrender. Have you ever walked into a room and felt that invisible weight of someone having already decided what you were before you opened your mouth? And if you have, what did you do with it? Did you leave? Did you shrink? Did you perform the version of yourself you thought they needed to see? Or did you sit down, fold your hands, keep your spine straight, and wait for exactly the right moment to show them what they had missed? Althia Rowan's story is fictional, but the rooms it describes are real. The assumptions it describes are real. The weight of being seen as less than you are in a meeting, in a job interview, in a classroom, in a space designed to make certain people feel they do not belong, that weight is real, and millions of people carry it every single day. What gives me hope is this, so is the power to change it. Not always in the dramatic $3 billion withdrawal way, sometimes in smaller rooms with less spectacle and more patience. But the principle is the same. You do the work. You build the thing. You walk into the room anyway. And when the moment comes, you act. Without hesitation, without apology, without raising your voice a single unnecessary decibel. If this story reached something in you, leave a comment and tell me where you're watching from. And what does this story mean to you? What room are you walking into right now? And what are you carrying with you when you go? And if you believe that stories like this one matter, hit like, share this with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe. Because there are more stories where this one came from. The work continues.